90.5.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great son, Sajifo Dr. Nkrumah.
Ago when you come with Makasa Kakra, and so when you come when Tiam Kakra, Menkasapi, Damapa Makade, Bakans Bakakran, and Yamakan Fancy. At long last, the battle has ended. And thus, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. And here again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the chiefs and people of this country, the youth, the farmers, the women, who have so nobly fought and won this battle. Also, I want to thank the valiant ex-servicemen who have so cooperated with me in this mighty task of freeing our country from foreign rule and imperialism. And as I pointed out at our party conference at Sorbonne, I made it quite clear that from now on
we must
90.5 change our attitudes, our minds. We must realize that from now on we are no more a colonial but a free and independent people. But also, as I pointed out, that also entails hard work. I am depending upon the millions of the country, the chiefs and people, to help me to reshape the destiny of this country. We are prepared to build it up and make it a nation that will be respected by every other nation in the world. We know we are going to have difficult beginnings, but again, I am relying upon your support. I'm relying upon your hard work. Seeing you in these thousands, it doesn't matter how far my eye goes. I can see that you are here in your millions. And my last warning to you is that you ought to stand firm behind us so that we can prove to the world that when the African is given a chance, he can show to the world that he's somebody. We shall no more go back to sleep anymore. Today, from now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that, after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. We are going to demonstrate to the world, to the other nations, young as we are, that we are prepared to lay our own foundation. As I said in the assembly just a minute ago, I made it point that we are going to say that we create our own African personality and identity. It's the only way in which we can show the world that we are ready for our own battle. But today, may I call upon you all that at this great day, Let us all remember that nothing in the world can be done unless it has the purported support of God. We have done the battle, and we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. Let us now, fellow Ghanaians, let us now ask for God's blessing. And for only 2 seconds, in your thousands and millions, I want to ask you to pause only for 1 minute and give thanks to Almighty God for having led us through obstacles, difficulties, imprisonments, hardship and suffering to have brought us to the end of our trouble today.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and the champion.
Very good morning to you, folks, and good morning to you, listeners all over the country. You are welcome to today's edition of Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. That should tell you that it's Saturday morning, November 18th, 2017. It's 3 minutes after 9, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's edition of the show. I hope by God's grace your weekend has started well, and I pray that it becomes a very exciting weekend. This week has been one of the weeks where the folks in economics and finance have dominated the conversation because it's all been about the budget, and the budget. We got hint of the budget being read somewhere last week when His Excellency the President hinted that we should expect the budget to be read and that there will be some reliefs that will be given in the budget. And so put all of us in the mood ready to listen to what the budget would contain. And so we've been discussing the 2017 budget until on Wednesday, the 2018 budget was presented by the Finance Minister in Parliament. That has been the sole issue being discussed on all media platforms across the country, be it TV, radio, the internet, and the print media as well. There are those who have captioned that budget as a 419 budget. There are those who have captioned it as a Wahala budget, and many other interesting titles that have been given to the budget by the Finance Minister. The conversation that has followed the presentation by the Finance Minister has been quite interesting. What has been dominant has been the fact that as we speak now as a nation, we do not know our debt stock. That's been one of the key issues that's been raised after the reading of the budget. Also has been the issue about how the Finance Minister has been picking and choosing dates and periods for his presentation, and that's been the concern of the minority in Parliament when they discussed the matter. But those who are for the budget say that this is a budget that is indeed going to bring growth and development into the country and is going to create jobs and opportunities for the Ghanaian youth. Whatever be your position on this matter, this morning the perspectives and the tangents that so far may not have been brought to the fore in terms of the discourse. Brace up for it, because that's what you'll be hearing this morning on Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. Once more, welcome to the show. My name is Samuel Ishen, and it's my pleasure to have you with me. Let me say this before I move on to look at the headlines of the newspapers that I have with me today. Now, information that we are gathering, and we were trying to cross-check with our colleagues from our sister station, Asempa FM, before we could put it out there, but I see it's been reported on one of the platforms as well, and that has to do with our brother and colleague, Kojo Asare-Bafo Achampong, popularly known as Kaba. Has died. That's the information we are getting. And if you check out the website of Star FM Online as well, you'll find out that the story is there. Asempa FM presenter Kaba dead. And that's very sad news that's coming through this morning. And it shook all of us here in the studio, myself and my producers, as we prepared ourselves to come on the show this morning to discuss the issues. Because how could it have been that the same person will listen to just this week, asking questions, putting tough questions to ministers and the resource person just this morning for us to hear he is no longer with us. Our condolences, our sympathies to the family, the wife Valentina, our own sister who was here with us, and we wish her strength, and we pray that the Lord himself will keep her in these very hard times. So that's very sad, news that's coming through this morning. Kaba is no longer with us. Once more, our condolences to the family. We'll move on to the headlines of the newspapers, and it has on its front page, that's the Ghanaian Times newspaper, FDA on war path. 16 drug peddlers rounded up. 15 Nigerians, 1 Ghanaian involved. Also, Kentampo waterfalls reopen. Pastor, son, wife grabbed over trader's death. And self-professed prophet arrested for rape and theft. That's all captured on the front page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. You will find on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper the story, Freetown disaster looms in part of Ablekuma, Kaswa Tollbooth, Ofankor, because of estate development on hills. And it's got a picture of some developments that is going on around the Kaswa Tollbooth area, buildings that are springing up on those hills. And sometimes when you look at how it's being done, it's obvious this is endangering the people who have properties on that hill. But our state institutions that are responsible for ensuring that these do not happen, what have they been up to? Seeing that developers are developing left, right, center. People are building on hills, and yet there are no safety measures when these buildings begin springing up. Daily Guide has on its front page, Mahama splits NDC. Pastor arrested over murder, and manhunt for 6 major Mahama killers. And it's got a picture of one Madam the Deko, and then Ya Amankwa, aka Bula, all captured on the front page of the paper. And King of Qatar to visit Ghana, all captured on the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper. The Spectator has on its front page stories like woman jailed for killing her rival, making money from waste, and going pants free, any health risks. And if I have a picture of Shelley Fimpomanso also on the front page of the paper, misunderstanding in marriages must not end in divorce. That's according to Shelley Fimpomanso, all on the front page of the paper. So that's by way of the latest news headlines that I have with me this morning to share with you. And for our discussion today, I'll have in the studio Mr. Kwesipa Jr. He's the managing editor of the Insight newspaper. Comrade Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed, former MP for Nanton and former Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. Professor Nino Douna is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana, and Dr. David Percy, a student of history and politics. And this morning we will thoroughly discuss the financial statement and economic policy 2018 budget presented to Parliament by the Finance Minister and its socio-economic impact on Ghanaians. Also, a critical analysis of political situation in Zimbabwe with the arrest or house arrest of President Robert Mugabe. And if possible, we'll take some optional comments. As always, your thoughts, your views, and your comments form an integral part of this show. And so you're always encouraged to send us your thoughts, your views, and your comments via our Facebook and Twitter handle at Samuel Ishen GH. At Samuel Ishen GH. Samuel Eshen is spelled together, and the Eshen is spelled ESHUN. You find me on Facebook, you add me, and you start sending your comments throughout. Gladly read these comments as and when I get them. And it must be emphasized that you can listen to us all over the country through our affiliates spread over the nation, and also you can listen to us live if you go to the TuneIn application and search for Radio Gold 90.5 FM. You'll find us there and you will be able to monitor us live. Also, can you go to the Google Play Store and search for Radio Gold 90.5? You'll find the application. It's got our colors and our logo. Install that application on your phone and you will be able to listen to us anywhere in the world. You can also check out our website and you'll be able to listen to us live on our website as well. Simply go to www.radiogold905.com and you'll be able to monitor us live on our website. As we go along, we'll tell you some of the stations that are picking the feed live, so it will help you in your search for radio stations spread all over the country picking this feed live on their networks. Good morning to you wherever you find yourself. Let's get back into the studio and listen to some interviews that we conducted after the budget had been presented, and also those conducted with the expectations of many. We bring that to you before we kickstart our conversation this morning. Do stay with us.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great son, Sajifo Dr. Nkrumah.
Well, I had, if you read the article that I wrote, I had indicated quite clearly that this was an incompetent handling issue. I had raised the issue that the government was basically using a strategy that you use to sell a car to sell tomatoes. And clearly, if you decide to use a strategy that you use to sell a car to sell tomatoes, you would fail. You are issuing a bond and you are using a vehicle that makes the bond so risky that it becomes a very risky bond. And normally when you are issuing a risky bond, investors expect a risk premium. They expect you either to give them guarantees or that you would then have to pay a little more. It's a very basic principle in finance, that the higher the risk, the higher the return. That is why the microfinance companies that take deposits, because they are risky, they pay you a lot of, interest. And so if you lose your money, you lose all. If you gain much. So once you are using a risky vehicle that you call the special purpose vehicle, you definitely have to cover the risk. And they were not willing to cover the risk. But they were selling this bond and making the public and the investors to believe that this was a risk-free bond. And yet the questions that surround the risk of this bond, you haven't been able to explain away. One, you are using resources from ESLA. And ESLA is the energy sector levy, which is a tax that is imposed on the people of Ghana to pay for this bond. Now, don't forget that any tax issue is a policy matter. And so any new government that decides that
You are welcome.
He has labored.
15 minutes after 9, and we are starting our conversation this morning. And if you just join us, I'd like to welcome you. My guests have already taken their seats, and our conversation on Alhaji and Alhaji today begins. And we're looking at the budget as read by the finance minister, the socio-economic impact it would have on us as Ghanaians and citizens, and your expectations whether they were met or not. That's the first issue we are looking at today. And I will start off with you, Comrade Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished listeners, and of course my senior colleagues here. I think that I was so shocked when I heard of Kabe's death, and I think I extend my sincere and profound condolences, and I believe on behalf of my senior colleagues here also to the bereaved family. When I heard it, I shouted in my car on my way. I mean, for me, this is a lesson to all of us, that you can go at any point in time, and that is the more reason why living in this world we must live sincerely, honestly, and at least do as much as we can. You know, you can't please everybody, but at least you try to please people who are very sincere and who want to be pleased with the truth and honest. I can imagine how Valentina would take it. Kaba was a friend, I mean, a very nice guy. Valentina is like a sister, you know, from her days at Radio Gold. You know, she's one journalist that sometimes you call her Mutala. I haven't heard of you for some time. I just pray that she'll be able to contain it, and may the good Lord, you know, receive our brother and her husband, you know, in his pleasing and merciful hands. Sean, budget statements are statements that are constitutionally mandatory to the extent that every single year you must tell the people of Ghana what your plans are. You must indicate to them your financial position and moving forward for the incoming year. And by so doing, you must also tell them what you have experienced in the past. If you read the budget as it was read in 2016, you would want to tell the people of this country the budget position or the financial position of the government in the preceding year, the kinds of things you were able to do and things you were not able to do. You would have to state that, and that is why any time budgets are going to be approved, there is the need for parliamentary select committees or committees, you know, to look at the expenditure returns. The expenditure returns would help them in giving the appropriation. If you budgeted that you were going to use this amount of money to do ABCD and it was approved, you should be able to tell particularly the committees that I served in the finance committee, and it happens in almost all the committees, depending on the ministry and agencies responsible that falls within the domain of a specific committee. You would have to tell the committee what you requested the previous year, what was actually given, and how the amount of money that was given was expended. You need to tell people. I witnessed instances where agencies would come and say that in the budget we requested this amount of money. We actually didn't get what we requested. This was how much we got, and this was how we expended, or if you like, spent that amount of money. I have also witnessed this in my days in Parliament where agencies will come and say that we requested this in the budget. As a matter of fact, we never got anything, and therefore we couldn't do what we intended to do. So that is why we are requesting for it again in this year's budget. I've also witnessed instances where agencies and ministries would say that we requested this amount of money. This was what was given. We actually spent beyond what was appropriated, and by so doing, we think that we need more to spend ABCD. Those things happen. But I remember in 2016, there was a decision between 2015 and 2016, there was a decision taken by the NDC government under the leadership of His Excellency President Mahama and then Minister of Finance and his two deputies, because of the experience we had in 2014. When we were looking at the 2014 budget, we realized that what we approved in 2013, there were a lot of over expenditure, in the sense that the expenditure returns indicated that a lot of ministries and agencies spent beyond what was appropriated, justifiably so because they gave reasons. So a decision was taken by government through the Minister of Finance that ministries and agencies should not spend beyond appropriation, and that even if there was the need for a ministry and agency to spend beyond appropriation, then the reason should be so compelling. And Sean, I can tell you that in 2015, 2016, we didn't experience the the deficit, if you like, as we experienced in 2013 against the 2014 against the 2013 budget that was approved. And I think that it ought to be stated clearly. I'm saying this because the Minister of Finance, when he appeared before Parliament to present the financial statement, he peddled absolute lies. I wouldn't say falsehood, absolute lies. And I really don't think that it is good for economy. I really don't think that it is good for policy formulation and implementation. To a very large extent, it is not good for would-be investors who would want to invest in the country. Because the investors sitting out there, before they invest, they would want to know the true state of the economy. They would want to know the strides that you have made as a result of your policy intervention and implementation. They would want to know. And in fact, information is so abound that they do not necessarily need to get that information from you, the Minister of Finance. They can easily find those informations. Now, if you have a Minister of Finance who comes to Parliament to read a budget and peddled absolute falsehood, and would-be investors who intend to invest millions of dollars, if you like, into the country, the ab initio would know that no, the managers of the economy are not truthful, and therefore they will begin to question almost everything that you state as to the prospects that would entice them to come and invest. And I think that is the reason why it is not only necessary, it is absolutely essential that when you are having a budget presentation, you try as much as you can to be very blunt, to be very honest, to be very sincere. Because you are not presenting the budget only to the Parliament. You are presenting the budget to the people of Ghana, and in fact, the international community will be monitoring. The IMF certainly would have monitored. The World Bank would have monitored. Our donor agencies would have monitored. Even countries that have actually assisted us financially will be monitoring. International business organizations that have investment in this country would be monitoring, and in fact local businesses will be monitoring. And that is why it is critical that you try to be very honest. Unfortunately, this was something that was completely missing in the thinking of the Minister of Finance. And it is understandable, knowing what the MPP stands for and what they do, and knowing the tradition from which this political party was born. You can understand that at any point in time, they glorify lies, and they will not be very sincere to the people of this country. And that is why I just want to raise that issue. But I would want to look at the thematic areas that were captured, because we can't look at the budget in entirety because of time. I would want us to look at the thematic areas and interrogate some of the promises that this government made and some of the things they claimed that they have been able to execute. And before I look at that, it is important for us to understand, in terms of policy formulation and implementation, for which reason you can achieve some successes economically, it shouldn't take less than a year. In fact, there are some interventions that you would implement today, and the results of such interventions would come sometime in 2 years, some even more than 2 years. It was interesting that the Minister of Finance, who indeed had just been a Minister of Finance less than a year, claimed that a lot of the successes that we have had is as a result of how they have managed the economy. And I say that yes, these are some kinds of if you like, creatures somewhere who can manage our economy to that level within 6-7 months. Because remember when he was appointed, remember when he went through the vetting, and remember when he fully took charge of the Ministry of Finance. So if you look at one, they had what they call the Nation Builders Corps, shortened as NBC, and he said that to be established to create at least 100,000 public sector jobs, to be established. It isn't that they have established it. He said to be established to create at least 100,000 public sector jobs. I know my understanding of public sector doesn't include private sector. Let's be very clear in our minds, looking at the ideological position of this political party and looking at the trend of things, even in Ghana, it is becoming very clear, unfortunately, that governments do no longer create jobs. That is the fact. We would love that government should play a critical role in the creation of jobs. Looking at the NPP as a center-right political party, of course, they have had some social intervention programs. That is different from creating jobs. If you look at their economic agenda throughout history, is very clear that the governments do not create jobs. Government creates the enabling environment for private sector to create jobs. That is what happens. Now, even in the communist and socialist states, the private sector does a lot of the things in tandem with the policy and vision of government. Now, I am saying this strictly, and selectively, because we are dealing with a center-right political party that claims that they are going to create 100,000 jobs, and we ought to interrogate how those jobs are going to be created. They said that public works project, we haven't been told what kind of public works projects they are talking about. It's a public works project. Public works, is it in the ministries? Is it in the agencies? Are there going to be some special initiatives that government is going to do and then fund it? And I'll come to the issue of our inability to raise the needed revenue as a state. Now, he also talked about afforestation. And I said, are these guys really serious? He talks about afforestation, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. He talks about sanitation, and he talks about community policing. All these programs are programs that are already existing. Under the National Youth Employment Program, there is an afforestation program in it. And the National Youth Employment does that with the Ministry of Agric. That is the point. Are graduates going to be willing to work in such activities? Because I know what it entails. To a very large extent, the focus of that particular afforestation project was not looking at the educated members of our state. It was looking at the uneducated ones, who are also citizens, who also pay taxes, and who also needed to be given the opportunity to work. So the afforestation, because you don't need a certificate to be able to go through the training, to be able to execute the kind of work that they expect you to do in the afforestation, industry. So that is one. Now he's talking about graduates. Clearly, the amount of money that is even paid to those who are engaged in that, I don't think that any degree or HND holder would want to engage in that, because that amount of money certainly would not suffice, if you like, the level of his education and the certification that the person has. So that's one. Sanitation. Is it going to be what the Zoom Lion is already doing with the Ministry of Employment and other agencies, which this government, through the cabal within the media, have bastardized? Zoom Lion is the list of my friends. As a matter of fact, I have very big problems with his execution. I have a lot of problems with a lot of the things he does. But the point is that if you are talking about sanitation as one of the means by which you can create these 100,000 jobs, is it the very thing you bastardize? Is it the very thing for which you accuse the previous NDC administration for corruption? Mind you, just some few days ago, His Excellency the President hailed Zoom Lion. So one wonder, what kind of hailing was this? Is it because the president knew that this was going to be captured in their budget, that these are the things they are going to do? I think that there is the need for more clarity and more explanations to be given. Community policing, everybody knows that community policing is under the youth employment, which this Christian as Zoom police. And these things are there. And the question then is, there were a lot of people who were engaged in afforestation. There were a lot of people who were engaged in the community policing. There were a lot of people who were engaged in nursing. There were a lot of people who were engaged in a lot of the models under the youth employment program. This government came, and what they have done is that they sacked some of them, and they are still following government for their salaries or allowances to be paid. They haven't been paid. Now, does it make sense for you to come and sack people and engage another people just because you want to tout to the people of this country and the international community that you have created these jobs? Another classical example had to do with the toll levy. That is the road tolls, the toll levy, that they came, sacked people, and employed our brothers and sisters who are physically challenged. Mind you, the toll booths. And they touted it. This is what we have done. We have created jobs for the physical challenge in our society. The certain, and people were hailing, the certain about it. Yes, we would want to see jobs that are being created, at least for the unfortunate members of our society, who not by their own dealing, but by the day of creation, that they happen to be challenged physically or disabled, if you like. And as a result of that, yes, we'll be happy to see the jobs are created. But remember, there are a lot of the people who were already engaged in such activities. Some of them were also disabled. They were physically challenged. And some were people who were dependent, I mean, who on whom they were these physical challenged people who were dependent on them. We had that. So what sense does it make when you come and sack members of our society, and then you create jobs and give the opportunities to other members of the society, and the people you sacked, they were already some who were disabled, or if you like physical challenge, you were there, and some of them were people who were taking care of disabled members of our society, and or if you like physical challenged members of our society, and yet you said that yes, clap for me, and that is precisely. So I think that there is the need for some clarity. This clarity was not found. I would want to find out specifically how those jobs are going to be created. Now the Minister of Finance went further to explain that it's about that the revenue mobilization for the graduates is the 100,000 just limited to the graduates alone. If the 100,000 is limited to the graduates alone, then the other afforestation, the sanitation, and community policing, is it also going to be another level? They should tell us how many people they are going to engage. I guess, and I won't be wrong to guess that way, that the 100,000 includes both the graduate, it includes those who are going to be engaged in those who are going to be engaged in sanitation, and also the community policing. So we need to have some clarity. Clearly, this was completely missing in the statement that the Minister of Finance. Another thing he said has to do with the national informal sector pension schemes. And I even look at it. They are talking about the government has initiated the process of establishing a cocoa farmers pension scheme. Wait a minute. The very cocoa farmer you are robbing, the very cocoa farmer who had paid for fertilizers, and the fertilizer was supposed to be distributed to them free, and you have written embossed on those fertilizer, not for sale, yet without any shame, you fraudulently selling this fertilizer to the farmers at the cost of 80 Ghana cedis. And for which reason a lot of the cocoa farmers haven't been able to purchase those fertilizers because they had paid for the fertilizers already. These fertilizers were brought by the NDC government under the leadership of Dr. Punya at Cocoa Board, and the board, the fertilizer was procured, they were paid for. Now you had no business selling this fertilizer, and when you asked them, they said no, they were selling the fertilizer to defray the debts. As a matter of fact, Cocoa Board had no debt. Cocoa Board went in for a syndicated loan of $1.8 billion. And that syndicated loan, Cocoa Board indeed projected that they were going to have about 800,000 metric tons of cocoa harvested for 2016. So when they went in for the $1.8 billion, they collateralized $750,000, which will take care of the $1.8 billion. So if you project that we'll get 800,000, we went in for a loan of $1.8 billion. If you are able to get 800,000, we will sell 750,000 out of the 800,000 to defray that particular loan, that debt. That is the 1.8 billion. Fortunately, because of the initiatives that were done by the previous administration, free fertilizers, other new breeds that were given, the training and assistance that was given to cocoa farmers, as a result of that, we reached the 1 million metric tons, because 966,400 metric tons of cocoa that we got. So what it means is that you can pay the 1.8 billion with the 750,000 that you collateralize for it, and you still have over 240,000 metric tons of cocoa. And the 240,000 is amounting to over $400 million. Now, this government lied to the people of this country that yes, we are selling that fertilizer which was already bought and paid for by the farmers. We are selling it to them at subsidized rate to be able to defray what debts. As a matter of fact, you still owe the farmers for over $400 million. What are you using that money for? So that is absolutely not true. So you can't do this to the poor farmer, the poor cocoa farmer, and yet you come back, you think that you can deceive them by saying that, oh, we are going to provide some pension schemes for the farmers. Now, if the farmer dies as a pauper because of your wicked policy interventions, your denial of what is strictly their right because they paid for that particular fertilizer, only for you to come and say, oh, there's going to be a pension scheme. I think the farmer will be more comfortable. That create the opportunities. Let me expand, increase the prices of my cocoa. I will make money and I can have my own pension scheme that I can establish for myself. It simply doesn't make sense. Sean, this government behaves like a child who is at his concrete operational stage of development. And if you ask psychologists, they will tell you how children at the concrete stage of operational development behave. And they behave precisely the same way. It is important also to look at the other issue they raised. They said that accelerate oil and gas capacity programs. I served in Parliament and I do know that there have been a lot of training that is done to build the capacity of those who play or who work in the industry. In fact, government of Ghana has given scholarship to a lot of young people to go to Dundee, Scotland, to be trained as oil specialists. I do know people, even within this government, who had support from the NDC administration to get fund. So the building to the extent that Get Fund even took a decision that a lot of the young people who went there through Get Fund scholarship and were trained, there is a choke in the system. Aside that, there have been a lot of capacity building. You remember that we're told that, oh, they spend a lot of money in capacity building and training, and they were mocking the NDC administration. So what kind of capacity building are they talking about here? That it finds its way even in our budget. They also said that under it, that National LPG promotion policy. And you know what it means? National LPG promotion, that government to implement the cylinder recirculation model. I mean, that is going to even create problems. We have said repeatedly that the challenges that we have with regards to these unfortunate fire outbreaks in the gas stations, it is not about cylinder recirculation. It is about people adhering strictly to rules and regulations governing the conduct and the operations of those gas stations. That is the problem. It has got nothing to do with cylinder. Why? People buy gas. We have seen instances where houses, would burn as a result of leaving the cylinders that they bring home. Now, this is a policy. I think that if the talking minister for energy is listening, because they talk too much, if the minister and the government is listening, the problems of the unfortunate fire outbreaks that we have and the disasters we have as a result of this gas station has got nothing to do with the cylinders recirculation. It has got nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with enforcing the laws and ensuring that the agencies that are tasked with the responsibility to ensure that people who operate such stations adhere to the strict rules and regulations governing their conduct and operations, they do so. It has got nothing to do with the Senate. And this thing is a policy of this government. I can't believe it. Another issue that is raised has to do, the government is to develop a petroleum hub to halt the illicit trading. But come on, let's get serious. It doesn't matter the kind of hub that you create. If the government himself is an accomplice in the fraudulent deals that happens in the petroleum industry, we haven't forgotten what happened at Bost. We haven't, have we, John? We haven't. Where 5 million liters we are told was contaminated. When there are processes of ensuring that even if there is contamination, how it is going to be cleaned. Under the NDC, we had less than 200,000, yet steps were taken to clean it. And by the way, the 5 million liters was purchased by who? Movipina, companies that were not even registered, companies that were not even operational, and they had nothing to do with oil, companies which even addresses and contacts could not be traced. And at the very time, we were told by experts that the 5 million liters would have indeed been filled in about 100 tankers, when Boss and Tor do not have that number. So clearly it was a fraud that was perpetrated on the people of this country, and that fraud was perpetrated by a so-called financier of this government through the collusion of the Flagstaff House. They robbed the state. So it doesn't matter the kind of policies to create a petroleum hub. It won't solve the problem. What will solve the problem is government to ensure that we understand what happened at Bost. With the 5 million liters, those engaged in it are punished to serve as deterrents. Having this will not solve that problem. Another thing is strengthen the financial sector. The government is to launch a national development bank to mobilize about 500 million, towards the agriculture and industrial transformation. At the very time when the same government went in to take about 400 million, 450 million, $100 million from Agri Development Bank illegally, fraudulently, at the time when the board didn't have a board. The board for ADB was not constituted. Government did that in the support of the so-called Planting for Food and Jobs. You remember when His Excellency the President had his State of the Nation's address in Parliament, he stated that I have gotten money from my Canadian friends, and we pointed out to them that they could not use that money for that. We were lambasted. I remember I was insulted left, right, and center. Have they been able to do that? Now, does it even make sense? Are you creating another bank? Is it going to rival a Agri Development Bank that has a responsibility and a mandate to support in the agri and industrialization sector? Is that what you want to do? I mean, this is completely confusing. They also say restructure the Ghana infrastructure investment. How are you going to restructure it? In fact, if you look at the Ghana infrastructure investment, that thing is very clear. I mean, if it is going to be adhered to, followed strictly, as that informed the vision of the NDC to establish it, you don't need any restriction. But it is not surprising. They want to change everything. Enterprises, they change. Youth employment, they will change. In fact, everything they get, they will change. Every single thing. Another thing that he talks about has to do with taxes. That incentives for young entrepreneurs, establishment of agricultural commodity and exchange to ensure that access to market. Look, I am a farmer. And I engage in farming. The interest of farmers is not just access to market alone. How do you provide access to market? When roads, feeder roads that were initiated by the previous administration to create access where farmers can cut their farm produce to the market centers have been abandoned. You have abandoned them. Cocoa rules, another big lie was told by the Minister of Finance that the cocoa board awarded Cocoa Rose construction to the tune of 5.6 billion. In fact, I think so. That's the figure. Is it 5.6? 5.6? No. He said that they awarded, I want to get the specific figure that they gave, about a little over 5 billion. And that the budget was 1.5 billion. And I asked myself, are these guys really serious? Now you have roads which construction is going to last. Some of them will take about 4 years, 5 years, or if you like 3 years maximum to finish. So every year you have a budget. And until those roads constructions are done, you don't pay. You pay them as they move on. I'll give a classical example. President Kufuor's house to that place, what's the name? Shashi, that road. Why? That road, construction and everything was done. They started at a time when they didn't even have a budget for it. The Sofo line interchange, President Kufuor commissioned it when there wasn't even a budget for it. Okay? So what you do is that any time work is done, then you have payment. So every year you raise a budget. So you can have a target that this project is going to cost us this much. But every year this is the budget we have for it. So where lies the over expenditure? And as a matter of fact, what this government has done, they have asked contractors to stop the work. And in fact, some of the road construction in Volta region have been cancelled. Do you know that we have 6 regions that produce cocoa in Ghana? Have been cancelled. And those who were deceived, some of our brothers who were deceived into voting out the NDC because certain greedy individuals were not pleased with the system, I believe that they'll be licking their wounds today. Why will you cut those projects? Why would you cancel them? And you can check from Cocoa Board. They have asked contractors to stop some of the work. And some of them with stages that stopping, delaying would only add cost, more cost to the project. Because once you are asked to stop, and you stop for a year now, the following year, there will be variations. And the cost will go in, some would even increase, some will double. That is what is going to happen. Now, another issue that the government talked about, the incentives for young entrepreneurs. And they said that IT, they talked about it, farming and agro-processing, they talked about those things. I don't think that I need to belabor those points so much because it simply doesn't make sense if you listen. The access to credit from financial institutions at the rate of 20%. Which financial institutions? Is it state institutions? Is it private institutions? Who determines what percentage that they pay? That you come out and say that access to credit at the rate of 20%. When you don't have control of the operations of those private sectors, how would you come and put a figure? But another point, I just realized that the issues are just too many. Yeah. How many minutes do I have? 2, 3? You have less than 2 minutes. Fantastic. Let me see if I can just run some of them. That energy for all, he added. And the most shocking aspects of the presentation, the minister said that we have added 445 megawatts. When? How? How did they do it? When did they do it? He also went further to talk about the fact that they have connected 289 communities through the rural electrification program. That is not true. Those communities, the connection of those communities, some of them included a lot of communities in northern Ghana, which I know. They are ongoing. You haven't added. There are things that are ongoing. You haven't added a single community. Yet he claimed that is what they have done. Another point that the minister talked about has to do that we have provided 52,191 portable solar lanterns. These things were all procured. And in fact, gas cylinders for rural communities, they were all procured under the NDC. They were all procured. In fact, they had started even distribution. Now he said that is what we have done. Now another issue, let me just land on this, has to do with one statement that the minister made. And that for me, he said they had ended DUMSO. And he talked about inflation. Everybody knows that DUMSO, I don't think I need to belabor it. I believe that my senior colleagues would talk about it. But last point had to do with inflation. He talked about the fact that they have stabilized inflation. And I said that it is about 11 point something. The government has begun the construction of the largest greenhouse estate. I mean, clearly, I even don't want to. He talked about stabilized inflation, yes, but the point is that from where to where? What is the state of it now? Now, what they did was that he will take October this year, and he will compare it to December last year. That's what they have done. He takes September this year, and you compare it to December. So you can have inflation, which was lesser than what we had in October. He won't take October and compare with October. He will take December last year and compare with October this year. Baumiers economics. Another point he thought had to do with the cedi against the dollar. He said that, the cedi has been stabilized. As of January 2016, the cedi to the dollar was $1, 3.8. January 2016. So at that time, that is the very day, 1st January, His Excellency Nanadu and the MPP took absolute and full charge of the governance of this country. The $1 was to 3.8. Today, as at the time the Minister of Finance was reading the budget, the $1 was to 4.52. Now, if this is not deceit, if this is not Bobokala budget, if this is not absolute falsehood and fraud perpetrated on the people of this country, why was he silent on that? He didn't talk about it.
Good afternoon. It's here for me, Comrade Murtala Mohammed, for your submission. It brings us to some 12 more minutes before we hit the hour 10. Professor Ninoy Dowuna is also with me here. Dr. David Percy here, and Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. is also here in the studio with me. Prof, let me jump to you on the budget as presented by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta.
Thank you very much. On my way here, I heard the submission of my comrade Murtala. And in fact, it reminds me of similar exercises that we did as political parties back in the 90s. Each time Dr. Kwesi Botwe presented his budget, political parties, we did a critique, and it was the speaking 93, the state of the economy in terms of the macroeconomic indices. Then you position it vis-a-vis what had been presented then, so 93 against 94 or 94 against 93. Now, looking back from Dr. Kwesi Botwe as the minister, first finance minister of the Fourth Republic, succeeded by Mr. Kwame Pepra. Then we jump into President Kufuor's era, Osafo Maafo, then Banredu, and for a short period, Dr. Osei Akoto held the fort. Then came late Professor Mills, may he so rest in peace, Dr. Dufour, then later on Mr. Tekpe, and now we have Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. Mr. Sean, if you listen to the pattern, and perhaps it has been constrained by the budget, the Constitution, or the template, because the Bretton Woods institutions have always played a role. So the template for preparing the budget statement and the details have followed this same trend. You understand?
Yeah.
And so when we do a critique, as my comrade had done, obviously it's apt. And I wouldn't like to go or repeat, because he's done an excellent job in picking on key issues. I showed him something. It's a government, the Section 25 on the Ministry of Business and Development. Comrade, you were in government, tell me. Government has begun the construction of the largest greenhouse estate units, 75 units in West Africa, Dowenya, in the Greater Accra region. I know a lady who was trained, and what that means is that you have a greenhouse, and then you don't have maybe go around the country to look for ideal environmental conditions for agricultural production, but you do so. So I don't know whether it's just begun or the NDC started it. I know that at least, if anything at all, the basic infrastructure framework was laid, but it's good. If you go through, as I indicated, it's the same thing, the performance for 2017, and then given the macroeconomic indicators, the exchange rate, interest rate, policy initiatives, the sector performance, sector by sector. And interestingly, Table 2, if you read the highlights of the budget presented on the 15th of November, just I think Wednesday, as put on the site of the Ministry of Finance. Table 2, Section 4, Table 2 says sector growth performance. And 2015, 2016, 2017. Agriculture, 2015 was 2.8. 2016, 3% growth performance, and then 4.3 for 2017, which is yet to end though. Industry minus 0.3 in 2015, minus 0.5, and then it is supposed to have jumped to 17.7, and it is because of upstream oil and gas. So if we were not to have oil and gas, I believe the same trend. Then, so industry, as we know, manufacturing, 0. Services, 6.3, 5.7, and 4.7. And then it goes on and on and on. I would like, moving forward for this country, I think this forum has been very, very wonderful. And we cannot do business as usual. I heard my comrade say, of course, the government that we have is philosophical underpinnings are being private sector and neoliberal in character. And our allies in the NDC say they are social democrats or social democracy. You know, we've debated this a lot. And Mr. Sean, I think if colleagues or those who engineer this program will permit, it may serve our interest to perhaps find a program like this, maybe one session a Saturday, and bring people in industry, devoid of partisan politics, to come and tell their story. You know, and you may find people who have been in industry for over 25 to 30 years to come and tell their story. Because when you read all these, and some of us at our ages now, at least Percy, you and Kwesi and myself, we are in the senior citizens rank, and at least we've lived through a lot of governments over the past 50 years or so. And so we have a personal experience. we want to ask colleague economists, and if they can phone into this program and educate us, all these pattern of the budget presentation year by year, what had been the philosophical underpinning for national growth and development? We have a National Development Planning Commission that just a year or two ago said we are developing a 40-year development plan. Does this budget and that of 2017 and even going back, have they fitted into a national development agenda? We want to be educated, and I think you have people who testing and then who phoning. They should tell us. But it is important that we draw from experiences. And today, I would like to go back to General Champon of blessed memory. 1972, he took over the reins of government in a military coup that ousted the then Progress Party government. And it is important to highlight certain things that happened. And economists and financial experts should position where we are going and where we are now, and whether we have been held captive as a result of the ERP and the SAP that have become the pattern of socioeconomic or financial policy initiatives since 1983. And then we will position it against what is happening on the ground. Because with all these that we are talking about today, our rail infrastructure has collapsed. Industry has collapsed. We've become a buying and selling nation, fueling and supporting the economies of other countries. Our tastes and preferences have changed. Today is Saturday. There are funerals. There are other social gatherings. Go and see what will dominate the menu. And everything that we eat today, and as we continue to do, is supporting the Thai rice grower, is supporting a Thai toothpick manufacturer. Christmas is coming. The Chinese cottage dressmaker is going to support us too, or is a company or the industry that is going to clothe our little kids. Our kids go to school from pencil, from chaliwote, from whatever they wear, from whatever they use, eraser, sharpener, pencil, pen, is from China. Now let's revisit Achampon's era. Achampon came in the military coup in 1972, and he took over the finance ministry. The finance ministry and defense was under Achampon. Achampon ruled from 1972, January 13th to June 1978, when he was ousted in a palace coup. And Achampon declared in his economic blueprint, developed the Charter of Redemption. And the Charter of Redemption had a theme: one nation, one people, one common destiny. And he said, we must capture the commanding heights of the economy. So the so-called Swedru Business School graduate who ran the military government, you can say it wasn't constitutional. But since 1993, we have had governments that have dominated parliament, so that nothing prevented them from passing their bills. But in the military era, it was just pure, the ruling council would decide, and Attorney General will put fine print on the law, and it became a decree. But be that as it may, let's go through. In capturing the commanding height of economy, it wasn't by lip service, practical deeds. And today, comrade, ask anybody, at least now Professor Abubakar, may he so rest in peace. Baban lawyer, we call lawyer Mahama. Visit anybody. These were farmers, and I'm talking about late Abubakar because I could still tell you that his combined harvester that he purchased by taking a loan at the development bank and paid back is still there. He bought Massey Ferguson 750 horsepower. He took a loan and paid back. And under the policy initiative that gave meaning to taking the commanding height or capturing the commanding heights of the economy, we were exporting rice. We grew rice or cultivated rice. We milled it at Nasia, bagged and exported. Don't go too far. In industry, what did we produce here? I have a cousin who worked with Makofi, and they will bring chassis and other parts and assemble Mazda. And he was an auto electrician. They could wire a vehicle from the dashboard to the tail light. We produce cars last year, we produced Mazda, we produced Toyota, we produced Nissan, we produced Peugeot, Bedford buses. New plan was assembled here. Willowbrook was assembled here in Ghana. And if you take a walk from Awudome all through to North Carnation, I don't know what we didn't produce here. Pens, plastics. Gambo Garment Factory had 4 shifts. They were producing shirts, and people from Burkina, etc., were coming to buy shirts. Not what we are wearing today. Electronic gadgets. Then in the area of setting up the infrastructure and giving the ample support, Acheampong made Agri Development Bank to play its role in granting credit for agricultural production. And the support services. If you go to CSIR, Soil Research Institute, go through their records. If you went to Agri Development Bank to take a loan, and you were going to operate a commercial farm more than 150 acres, assessing the suitability of your land was done free of charge by the Soil Research Institute, because they were giving subvention to do that. And you had lots of commercial farms. And indeed, factories were made to have farms, and that was a basis, or the incentive was that you get letters of credit to support your import license. That was General Acheampong. In the area of communication, the Edge satellite station, that of course now had become antiquated by way of modern technological advancements. But the Edge satellite station at what do you call it, Kuntunse, Acheampong started it. He started Pong hydroelectric power, the lower dam, that was completed during Liman's time. Acheampong started it. And if we want to give the litany of it, the Gihok industries were operating. Today, Accra has joined up with Kaswa, Insawam, Aburi, Pram Pram. It is because of migration, because the countryside has collapsed. The countryside has collapsed. You are operating a port system that, fortunately, for the crisis in La Côte d'Ivoire, vehicles from Mali, Burkina, Niger are coming to Tema Harbor, and you don't have a railway line. The passenger railway line ends at Asapratuna or whatever it is. You don't have a railway line to the quay where the ships berth, and you see articulators carting cocoa, articulators carting cargo on Fridays or any evening. That's why when you're on the motorway, the motorway end to Tetekwashi, it's all gone. Lots of potholes. And we continue to do business and do things that will never give us any economic development for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so if you position the budget, it's been the same problem. So last year was Asempa. This one is what? It's been giving putting Ghana back to work. 2018, November, it will be the same thing. So as we talk now, have we added 1 kilometer of railway line anywhere? Even giving the colonial pathway, the colonial tortuous pathway, have we added 1 kilometer? And who tells you that transporting cargo, whether liquid or solid, apart from water, rail is the cheapest? Which economist doesn't know this? At least if the colonial people constructed rail lines to centers where they could get agricultural raw materials or mineral ores, the lines are there. Those economic activities are still taking place. Cocoa is still being cultivated in Western region, Central region, Eastern region, and that's a rail network. That's a rail network. We have railway line to Shah Hills, at least to bring rock boulders for the construction of the Tema Harbor. But then the line was there. It's all gone. So articulators are cutting cargo. When you go into Bolga, you see a refinery that has been put there. Ask whether anything goes on there. And articulators are passing through Bolga to Accra to come and take liquid petroleum products to upcountry. Where are the irrigation dams? That's why I asked that. Articulators go past Ashama irrigation dam. When they get to Temamoto Way, don't they know the Wenya is ahead? And they branch to Tema Harbor to go and bring rice and distribute everywhere. Rice, 120 days, you have rice on the table. 120 days. And so the last time I came here, we said we have free SHS. We have about 2.5 million children in school from SHS to primary school. We all have children. At least some of us have taken our children through the mail. Can you tell me that your children or any child can keep a pencil a week? Or a pen a week? So compute about 12 pens and 12 pencils given 12 weeks and see the number of children who use pencils and pens. If you go to Okanshi today, you can buy a stick of pencil, if you even buy it in part, 35 pesos. And we are challenging our economies and governments. Can we encourage anybody to set up a factory at industrial area at North Carnation and produce pencil at 35 pesos? Is it the World Bank that will tell you not to do this? These are the basic fundamental issues. In the area of housing, since state housing collapsed, look at the reckless development. And today we are talking about what? You stand at Gbebese, and then I tell you that I'm located with this address. What is the meaning? And even the Google that we're talking about, I said we went to Tamale in April, and we wanted a hotel on the highway leading to, Bolga. It was directing us, all right, take left. That is what it has saying. We ended up in somebody's house. Say, where is the hotel? So the hotel is just over there. Because that is it to direct you if the road is there. And so if the road is there, and you tell me that you are at house number 10 at Avenue P South, I don't need this Google map to drive there. But under General Champon, when state housing was functioning, look at Dansoman. Champon did it within the 6 years. It was a fallow land. And look at the infrastructure, the roads. Even where it was state land that was given out, I believe, Jowulu, East Legon. Just look at the infrastructure, the road network. And when you extend it to New Achimota, which the state housing went there, then go beyond to Alhaji and see the mess. And in all this, we live over here at Letebi Okoshi, Kokomlemle, etc. Houses have been there for over 60, 50 years. The road is there. It has never seen quota. We're talking about basic things. Adwasafo's constituency, from Kwabenya roundabout to ACP, go and see the nature of the road. Recently, the truck drivers were lamenting. Awful. And it's not the only place. All over. Even if Accra is a subset, we are not saying Accra is Ghana, but just look at the state of infrastructure, sanitation, etc. So if government is about development, then over the years, we've not seen anything. And we are being told that children, graduates are finished, as the finance minister indicated. They finish school, no hope for them. And perhaps, Kwesi, those of us on the left side of the divide, maybe we have also not help. And then we have allowed this, what I would say, unfortunate thinking that the private sector is the engine of growth. It is an engine of growth, but it is not the engine of growth. And there are historical reasons. Tell me here today, the history of capital formation in terms of finance. The Nimados and the giant private people who did well, who were supported by the state, they've died and everything has collapsed. Wache Matres, YF, Poku Transport. How come? If they were alive today, their businesses will collapse because second-hand articulators are coming. Railway has collapsed. State is not supporting, other than to tell us that you've gotten all these micro indices well, and then people, why are they not sourcing? Because the market cannot support what they are doing. But not too long ago, as I indicated, we produced many things here. And so we kept money circulating in this country. Today, any foreign direct investment, as we keep on saying, in billions, when they come and you change the dollar, and Sean, if your brother is abroad and he sends you $20, $50, let's say $100, and you change, I bet you 80% is going back. Because if it's on the child who is going to school, his ribbon, the girls, the ribbon they use, the thread that they use if they have to braid the hair or plait the hair, the socks they wear, the underwear, the material itself, the shoe, the lunch bag, all is going back to where from China or Taiwan. So under these circumstances, you can only succeed in finding loopholes in the previous budget to give credence or justify what you have, and then your time will come, you leave, another government comes, and it's the same trend. But where we are now, it is important and devoid of partisanship that we place this country's development agenda. If it is a railway line that we have to find, fortunately or unfortunately in the past, we have to find where we could send electric, what do you call it, a telegraph, because you need to communicate. Another railway is coming single track. But today, we don't have that as an encumbrance. And so, do we have to align? We say we have an inland port at Buankra. It's very good if we could transport our cargo and no vehicle from Burkina, etc., to bypass Buankra, because you are taking your cargo in rail and you create a large warehouse where people can take off their cargo to the hinterland and pay us and save even the road. But we have not even added a single track. If you see the railway line that is just passenger from Accra to Nsawam, and you look at it, some of us with nostalgia, when the train leaves Accra at 6 o'clock and by 7 is at Nsawam, 12 o'clock is in Kumasi. Today, put a vehicle on the road and say you want to go to Kumasi. 5-6 hours with hazards. And we're talking, we have a minister now for railway. 1 year is gone. Is there any track? And the ministry had been there since President Kufuor's time, through Mills, President Mahama, and to date. And yet, some of us are waiting for the day we jump on the train and say we're going to Cape Coast. It doesn't exist. And then we say the private sector, and so governments can't do business. Governments can do business. Even in the advanced democracies, where they champion neoliberal policies, governments do business. I live in Canada. Canadian Pacific Rail, that runs coast to coast. Canadian National is owned by the state. And as a result, they give practical meaning. And I'll give you a typical example. They tell you, you can import anything that you can bring into the country. But if you produce Coca-Cola and the factory is at Tema, you cannot sell Coca-Cola like we're doing in Tamale or in the northern regions. You need to set up a bottling plant. And in setting up the bottling plant, obviously there will be extra cost because you have to transport your raw materials. But then they will tell you, will give you a tax concession for doing that. And Canadian Pacific or Canadian National will take the raw material there for you and help you to distribute. Air Canada is owned by the Canadian government. If private sector is the engine of growth, privatize the Ghana Armed Forces and privatize the Ghana Police Service, like we privatize a collection of water bills. Privatize everything, but who tells you that the state cannot run business? And indeed, we do these things it's a lazy way out in buying ourselves out of problem because we've lost the ideological issue. We need to re-clarify the ideological perspective. And we need a philosophical basis for our national development agenda. Then we will know what we are doing. Other than that, the way we are going, budgets will be read every year, and we keep in Accra. You use more rough road, like safari type of road, than any. There's nowhere you go in Accra. I say maybe Kumasi, that you can say, well, I'm driving on even road chippings, which at least will give me a smooth surface. 50% of your journey, anywhere you commute to any destination, you have to go through rough road. So if you have a vehicle, ask your mechanic, or let's ask ourselves. You know where we spend money, not on the engine or not on the gearbox. Today, it is your tie rod, it is your ball joint, it's your spring, it's your shock absorber, because the car is going this way, that way, and if I'll cap it, Ali Mazuri of blessed memory said that in Africa, when you see a driver driving straight, the driver is mad. Because 9 out of 10, the road is not good. And if you see a driver going straight, then the driver is mad. Because he doesn't seem to know what he's about. I'll rest it for colleagues to also have a share.
Thank you, Professor Nino Odoruna. I must say I've been very, very touched by your presentation this morning. I mean, real situation economics, analyzing the budget. Very, very impressive. I'll come to Dr. David Percy on the budget by the Finance Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much. A budget merely summarizes a government's policy, expresses it in financial money terms, to finance through our taxes, by and large. And then in Ghana, for the last several decades, a significant share of that has come from quote-unquote donors. And the current euphemism for them is development partners, and which is a very strange term because they have a permanent interest in our underdevelopment. But back to the budget. It is essentially an annual installment in any government, and for that matter, any party in power's vision. So you could say that it is an annual installment of the MPP's vision for Ghana. Okay. Now, I made a point, I believe on this program, on other occasions, that the MPP has reduced policy by and large to attractive slogans, okay, that are often devoid of much thinking and planning. Or if any thinking and planning has gone on at all, it is different from what is stated. And I'll illustrate in a few moments with what is happening or about to happen with the education sector. Okay. But you know, the other things that the presentation does, I mean, you look at the body language of a presenter. Okay. And on Thursday, was it Thursday?
Wednesday.
On Wednesday, in between doing various other things, I tried to watch the presentation by our Minister of Finance. At the very start, he reminded us about his grandparents, and then he insisted at every turn in mentioning personally our president, his cousin. And his whole demeanor suggested that of a con man, someone who knew he could get away with it. He was basically having fun, painting a picture that is largely unreal, okay, but which will pass. I mean, let's face it, they have sufficient bodies in Parliament to pass any foolishness. They do. And that what we say or do will not really touch them. Okay. And then one thing that also that leapt out, okay, when I was able to concentrate for a bit, was this thing about the something called national I'm struggling for the name, but it was, you know, immediately reminded me of some of the concepts that had
the Builders Corps.
Yes, okay, National Builders Corps or something. Yes, okay, or some of the things that were put together under Nkrumah, the Builders Brigade, etc., etc., etc. Okay, but on this occasion, it was about tackling unemployment, and let's face it, the MPP hinged its grab for power on unemployment, youth unemployment, graduate unemployment in particular. In fact, they promoted the formation of a unemployed graduates association. These days I don't hear of them. Okay, because of course the purpose has been achieved. They now have power. And so dealing with that is a major issue. And I said, well, okay, that looked interesting. Okay. And some of the elements match something that I had been thinking about much. For instance, I could, in the area of fiscal planning, you have this problem where our local authorities don't have sufficient bodies, okay, to just deal with the task of regulating development, okay. As a result of which, if you take an application, say you want to build, there are not enough persons to deal with your issue. So there's a queue, there's a delay, which encourages people to make unapproved payments. Okay, if you were to go around the city, you might find it's become almost a ritual. People start developing. Somebody appears from the assembly, he writes stop work, which is basically an invitation to come and negotiate. And you go and negotiate. You pay a bribe or two, and you go on quietly with your business. Meanwhile, this is an area that can create jobs, that can pay for itself. Okay, that you employ more persons, and the fees that you charge pays them. And developers get what they need in a fraction of the time. And it helps everybody. And you get out of this madness and chaos that we see in Accra and other sprawling centers. One other area is the area of economic data that will help investors. And by this, I'm not talking about foreigners, because all our governments since Nkrumah have come to believe, maybe with the possible exception of our champion, that an investor is necessarily a foreigner. Okay, when people talk about investors, from the head of GIPC to your Odinihu or local paramount chief, to whoever, when they talk of investors, they are looking for people who are not like us. When in fact the biggest and largest group of investors in our country are small farmers. Okay. So you're looking for economic data on the basis of which investors can make decisions. You're looking for it, it's not available. You want to even pay for it. They have no mechanism to take money from you. And actually, one of the things that I noted a long time ago was that if you're a foreigner, preferably an Obroni, you could get access to any data on our country. But if you're Ghanaian, the official will ask you, why do you want the information? Why do you want the information? What do you need it for? Because of course they recognize that information is power. And the entire structure of our government and the thinking of our bureaucrats. This goes back to establishment under colonialism, was to service the interests of the colonial power. So data for the white man, immediately. Data for Kodak, why do you need it? You don't need it. Okay? But then if we are going to get out of our situation and build an economy that works for us, is driven by our concerns and our issues, then this focus has to be changed. So for instance, you could employ people to collect data on a timely basis and to provide it commercially so that it also pays for itself. Okay. revenue collection again. So these are beautiful ideas, okay? But then, as I was saying, the demeanor of the body language of the minister suggested that this was an unserious event, okay? And whatever it was, whatever lies were told, whatever misrepresentations were made, he will get away with it. And the evidence is clear. Okay. So on the one hand, one can say that there's a number of things that looked interesting, but you don't really believe it. But back to the basics, and some of the points have been raised by my colleague Murtala and then Prof. And that's the central issue. My brother Murtala spoke about the MPP being center-right, by which I understand that he's saying that in distinction to his own party, which I believe claims to be center-right.
We are not.
You are center-right.
Center-left.
Or center-left.
Yes.
Okay. There's no real difference.
Or I wanted us to be extreme left.
There's left and right. There's nothing like center-right and center-left. And also relating to the point that was just made by Prof. Dawona, it's time to get real. It is really time to get real. Okay? And it speaks to also one of the paradoxes in our recent political history. You have the NDC, okay, which says that it is a party of social democrats, in brackets, the party of capitalists pretending to be socialists, that spends its time in power, pandering to the concerns of capitalists abroad and home. Spends all its time in power and neglects the concerns of working people, which is one of the major reasons why people refuse to stand in the sun and to re-elect them this past few months. And then you also have the MPP, which says that it is a party of property-owning Democrats, okay? Old-style feudalists, slave owners, capitalists, landlords, albeit built on a very narrow ethnic and hegemonic agenda, which floats and initiates at least what policies and projects that on the surface appear to be pro-people. So that, for instance, you can hear our president talking about social housing, something that I never heard under the NDC. Okay? At least they have gone ahead with this bold gamble with free SHS. It's a powerful, attractive. Who can be against free SHS? Okay? But which is really designed by all the acts of omission and commission to wreck public education, to provide a free-for-all for private profiteers in the same manner that has occurred with basic education over the last 40 years. But it will happen much sooner and much faster. Over the last 40 years, you've gone from a situation where someone like me, who went to also homeschool, and then went on to Fanspen, doesn't have a dog's chance to follow the same path today. Okay? So, the fundamental issue is, where are we going? Where does the MPP intend to take us? The MPP intends to take us to the same capitalist hell that the NDC was pursuing. No real change. If there are any changes, it is in the talk. And I'm saying this because, I like to spend my time on your show, which is a very important show, to dispel myths. Okay? At any rate, not to sustain what you might call misconceptions that may lead people in the wrong direction. Because there are many young people who seriously believe that the problem of unemployment can be addressed under the MPP, and that is under capitalism. It is not possible to do so, because capitalism rests on an army of unemployed. First, to keep wages down. The capitalist makes money by keeping wages down. Many other costs he can't control. They are beyond him, if you understand. But wages he can keep down. And that's how the businessman's profits are made, by and large, by keeping wages up, by paying people wages that they can't live on. So if it is the thinking and the expectation of anybody that the problems of unemployment can be addressed along the capitalist path, that person is in delusion. And for the 4 years that the NDC was in power, and I can say, even before I get there, that look, the only solutions that will work, that will address the issues of employment, of livelihoods, of social well-being, are solutions that work to our collective problems and collective profit. Okay, that is another definition of socialism. Collective solutions that work for the many, the majority, those who work, those who produce society's wealth, those who build society, such that the teacher can afford to take his children through the courses that he teaches. There are teachers in private schools now, right? Teaching courses and being paid. The children cannot go through those courses. There are workers laboring wherever, name it, Ashalibotre, wherever, building. They can't live or rent the houses they are building. And so long as this dance continues, our problems will not get resolved. They'll get worse. The only way we can deal with it is through collective solutions that work for all. And so, for instance, you struggle to find any mention or any attention being given to the issue of cooperatives. Okay? I mean, as an example, this one district, one factory, okay? Even if it is not said openly, is premised on external persons, external actors going into a district to go and invest. Right? Whereas it's acknowledged that opportunities exist and that there are local residents with needs. What is it that stops us from getting persons organized in teams and with state support, public support, getting them working and earning a living and addressing our problems? Like that, our economy is not driven by importing, on this occasion, at least the water is locally produced. But these cans of is it energy drink, I suspect are imported. And the point was made by Prof. Dorner. Practically everything we wear, we eat, provides jobs for others. Okay? And because we are looking through this narrow prism of economic development, which says that, look, unless a solution to the problems of many can be made through the profit of a few, we will not address it. Unless a problem that affects many can be addressed through an arrangement that makes profit for a few, we will not touch it. So in every direction, we are looking for investors, or in quotes, slave owners, to come and exploit the cheap labor of the Ghanaian and make a fortune, so that the crumbs can fall to us, the bureaucrats and the policymakers and the politicians. But as for the problems of the Ghanaian people, they'll not be addressed. And before coming, I tried to go through there's one interesting statistic that leapt at me, and I'll finish in a moment. There's an analysis by one NGO, SEND. Okay, SEND, yes, okay. They did a preliminary assessment of the budget, of course. And they point to the fact that there's a dissonance between, in the health sector, for instance, and in education and agriculture, there's a dissonance between the high phrases that were stated by the minister and the reality in terms of the provisions. But one interesting statistic that leapt at me was that between 2016, last year, and this year, there has been a 30% increase in neonatal deaths because government could not find money to fund immunization. And at the end of the day, these are really the issues. What does the budget say and can deliver to outcomes that address our people's concerns? Whether it is jobs, it is nutrition, food, it is housing, health, education. Those are the real issues. Forget about all the dance about GDP growth, when in fact the bulk of that growth is in the hands of others and not us. And what does it say to the specific outcomes, to the level of housing, to incomes, to nutritional status of our people, to health? I'm saying that just this one statistic, that 30% increase, as a result of which average life expectancy is going down. These are the real issues about people's lives, which this budget is supposed to speak to. Now, so what will happen is that I realized that before the budget statement, there was a real effort put out to corral the media, to paint a picture of increasing well-being, okay, and all basically to mute any criticism. And I have no doubt that post-budget, greater effort will go into it in fooling the Ghanaian people that they've never had it so good, when the primary concerns really remain satisfying those who financed our president's campaign. And as we've seen through whether it's the Ken bond or the, this recent escapade, the energy bond, okay, you are going to have this toxic diet of media activity that presents a picture that things are going very well, whilst every single opportunity we seized on to loot the national purse so that campaign debts can be settled. It's a very simple formula. Thus far, one can say that it has worked. I don't know how far it can be sustained. I'll end here.
Thank you, Dr. David Percy, for your submission. I'll come to you, Mr. Pratt.
And for whose benefit the budget was presented, to understand what was being said and how it was being done. Now, I think it must be made abundantly clear that the Minister of Finance, all the other ministers, and indeed the members of Parliament, the President, and all of them are persons who have been entrusted to do a job on behalf of the people of Ghana. And the people of Ghana are entitled to know what they're doing, to understand what they're doing, to give them direction on what they're doing, and to participate in what they do. When I was a little boy growing up, budget hearings or presentation of budgets and so on were things that people were excited about and interested in. Indeed, in my days as a child, my own parents and all persons in the community were glued to their television sets and radio to listen to the presentation of the budget. How did that happen? Because in those days, the budget told you how the price of a tin of milk was going to be affected. The budget told you about cloth and how much it was going to cost. It told you the price of petrol and the price of kerosene. The budget was about things that concern people in the street. The budget instantly made it possible for people to realize that they were either going to get relief or they were going to get more austerity and so on. If my memory serves me right, this format of budget presentation was adopted around 1983 upwards because we had embarked upon this IMF World Bank project. People were getting increasingly agitated about the losses of jobs, about the harsh conditions and so on. And our elite, in conjunction with their foreign masters and so on, decided that from then on, budgets would not be read in the traditional manner. So we listen to budget presentations and so on. It's all about gross domestic product, gross national product, per capita income, the rate of inflation, and so on. So people are not able to relate to the budget. People are not able to see how the budget directly affects them. And this is an art of deception. This enables the elite to carry on in a manner that confuses the people. And I'm very, very uncomfortable with the format which we have now adopted as opposed to the previous format. We dealt with the nitty-gritty of our lives, to the things that affect us immediately and so on. This change is deliberate, this change is deceitful, this change is meant to confound the masses. Now, having said that, I think it's important for us to take account of something which Dr. Percy has said and to take it forward. If you look at this budget and what it represents in terms of paradigms and so on, this budget is not different from the budget which was read in 1983. It's not different from the budget which was read in 1990. It's not different from the budget which was read in 2012, and it's not different from the budget which was read last year. They all aim at achieving the same objective. This budget is designed as an instrument for the promotion of neoliberalism. And we began vigorously pursuing that part of neoliberalism in 1983. We were already on the part of neoliberalism from 1966. But by 1983, the elite in Ghana, our rulers and so on, had firmly committed themselves to follow the path of neoliberalism. And so that's what it was meant to do. Now, in examining a budget, you can look at what was said, what was presented. That's one way of examining a budget. You can also look at what was not said, what was not presented. And I intend to do a bit of both. Mindful of the fact that even if all the time was allocated to me, it will not be sufficient to discuss this budget. So I'll pick and choose to illustrate my point. And I want to start with sports, youth and sports. Indeed, in the last election, we made so much noise about the youth and how the youth had not been fully integrated in the national development process. We spoke a lot about integrating the youth into the processes of production and so on. It was a major election issue. Now, if you look at this budget, all that the Minister for Finance, speaking on behalf of His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, said about youth and sports is that government will set up a sports development fund. And I suppose they are setting up this sports development fund so that we can solicit for funds into the sports development fund for the development of sports and youth projects and so on. As far as I'm concerned, the announcement suggests very strongly that when it comes to youth and sports for 2018, we are going to do Lala Sulala. You understand? That we are going to do Lala Sulala. Because nowhere in this budget were we told of the allocation for youth and sports. Check the budget. And for me, this is a critical omission. You see, a lot of people think that sports is just about fun. It's about gathering people to kick a leather ball around. It's about throwing punches and so on. Sports is an important aspect of national development. Sports is related to the promotion of health of our people. Sports can be used as an instrument for the integration of the different parts of our society. Sports is a major aspect of the national development effort. And the neglect of sports in this budget speaks volumes about the orientation of those who prepared the budget and the nature of this budget. So I'm using this just to illustrate the point that some things were left in the budget and that at the appropriate time it will become important for us to examine the budget carefully and to find out what was not included in this presentation. This is just an illustration. Now we should begin also to look at some of the things that were said in the budget. And one of the most important and striking things which was said in the budget had to do with job creation. Creating jobs for young people, for university graduates and so on. And a lot of people applauded the finance minister when he made the point that in 2018, 100,000 graduates will be employed. Sounded very, very sweet. But then, yesterday, I listened to Radio Gold. And I was amazed at the capacity of ordinary listeners to analyze the facts that had been presented. The minister had indicated that 50 million Ghana cedis had been made available for the employment of 100,000 graduates in 2018. So the listeners of radio and so on did a very simple calculation. If you have $50 million, 50 million Ghana cedis in a year, for 100,000 graduates, you can find out how much each graduate will get. And it's a very simple arithmetic. You divide 50 million by 100,000. Then you get the per capita. And then after that, it's for 12 months. 1 year is for 12 months. So you divide what you get by 12. And the result was amazing. Listeners of Radio Gold, not the academics in the university and so on, were able to establish through this very simple arithmetic that every month, 100,000 graduates which will be employed, each one of them will get 47 cedis a month as pay. That was the promise. And I'm wondering, who in Ghana will work for 47 cedis a month? Graduate on top, 47 cedis a month pay. You know, and this is a mistake that our academics, professionals, so-called professionals, and politicians make. Sometimes they assume that the average, what they call the ordinary Ghanaian, is so daft that they can throw anything at us. In the end, it turns out that if we are truly going to employ 100,000 graduates in 2018, each one of them will get 47 cedis a month. My goodness. My mathematics is so bad that I wouldn't have attempted to do this mathematics. But 47 cedis a month, those of you who are jubilating, the graduates who have been unemployed for 10 years, who now think that they are going to get jobs and so on, at the end of the month, they will give you 47 Ghana cedis. What are you going to buy with that? Kako or abolo or what? How are you going to go to work? How are you going to pay your transport fare? I mean, incredible. But this is what we are fed with. You know, one of the other issues involved in the 2016 campaign was the electricity tariffs. Major issue. The opposition then promised that if they came into power, they would reduce electricity tariffs. In fact, they complained that for some areas and so on, electricity bill was far more than the rent that was being paid by some Ghanaians, and that they would do something about the electricity bill. These days, I'm listening to radio more often, because the source of entertainment, and some of the things that are said on radio just blows your mind. I mean, there are incredible things that are said on radio. So sometimes it's a source of entertainment. Sometimes it's a source of information, and so on. So I'm trying not to miss radio as much as I used to do. I listen to radio quite a bit. Now, even listening to radio, many people are saying that now, 10 months after this government came into power, they are paying more for electricity than they used to pay 1 year ago. So, first of all, it's the president who tells us that we should not worry at all, that electricity tariffs will go down in the budget. There were initial questions which were asked because under the current dispensation, as part of the deception, we are told that government has no hands in fixing fuel prices. Government's hands are not in the fixing of utility tariffs and so on. And that these are done by regulatory organizations. And when it comes to utility tariffs, it's the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission which does that. Parliament is not involved as far as I'm concerned. So, but the president tells us that it will be in the budget. Who will put it in the budget? Is this the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission who prepares the budget? Certainly not. Now, what is it in the budget for? What is in the budget is meant for the approval of Parliament. So, what has changed? Has the regime changed? Well, you can keep asking those questions. They're important questions, they're relevant questions, and so on. But then, the minister goes to Parliament, and the minister says that electricity tariffs will be reduced, I think, between 13% to 20% or thereabout. That's what is in the budget. And then I found something very interesting. It says that for domestic consumption, it will be reduced by 13%. And for non-domestic consumption, it will be reduced by 13%. So what is happening? Because I thought that the distinction between domestic and non-domestic was to show some difference. Now, if domestic consumption is 13% and non-domestic consumption is 13%, why differentiate?
That's true.
So I was stunned, I was baffled, I was dizzy, and so on. But you see, because utility tariffs have become a major issue in our politics and so on, many Ghanaians are now very well educated. And we do know that one of the most important things in the determination of utility tariffs has to do with what they call the generation mix. You understand? And the generation mix is so important in that determination because if you generate power, hydro generation of power, the maximum cost, one is hydro, is about 3 cents per unit. When you move on to thermal generation, the minimum cost is around 11 cents per unit, rising up to about 33 cents per unit. Now we are being told that as a result of rainfall patterns and all kinds of problems, this country is moving away from hydro to thermal generation. That at some point, 70% of the power that we generated came from hydro and 30% came from thermal. I hope you are following what I'm saying, the figures and so on. Now we are told that thermal is producing almost about 70% and hydro about 30%. So this reduction, how is that going to be made possible? Are we going to create new rivers? Are we going to depend more on gas than crude oil? Because if you use gas, it's cheaper than crude oil. What is it that is going to account for this reduction in tariffs? Of course, there are other indicators. The value of your national currency is also important in the determination of utility prices. If the cedi continues to fall, to do badly in 2018, it will affect utility prices. And the indications are that the cedi would do badly in 2018. I'll come to that. It will do badly in 2018. So the factor of the value of the currency is also not favorable. Then prices of raw materials for power generation are also important. And one of the most important ingredients in power generation has to do with fuel, gas and crude oil. Now, if you watch the international market now, the prices are rising. So I'm sitting here, and again, I am lost. What magic is this government going to work to make this possible, the reduction in utility tariffs? What magic is the government going to work to make it possible? Is it one of those promises which are made and which are never kept? Is that one of them? Then we do know that one of the major issues around election time also had to do with fuel prices. And indeed, for fuel prices, we also know that our governments do not control the world market price of fuel. We do not control that. What we control are the taxes on levies on fuel. And indeed, the MPP in the position said that it will reduce taxes and levies on fuel in order to bring the price down. In this budget, there is no mention of the reduction of tariffs, of levies and taxes on fuel. So therefore, it means that that promise will not be kept. Indeed, what it means is that given what is happening with our cedi, what is happening with crude oil and gas prices and so on, we can only expect that the price of petroleum products will go up in 2018. Then there is the area of food production. And food production is very, very important. I'm not talking about agriculture. Agriculture is much, much bigger than food production. I'm talking simply about food production. It's a very important area. Everybody has to eat in order to survive. We need to eat. If you don't eat, forget it. Nothing will happen. You understand? In fact, if you don't eat for some time, you are likely to die. So eating is very important for us. Now, this year, and this is not the fault of Nana Akufo-Addo. Nana Akufo-Addo did not give birth to fall armyworms. The New Patriotic Party did not import fall armyworms. But the attack of fall armyworms is a reality. I have heard from some government estimates that as much as 100,000 hectares of farmland or more was destroyed by the fall armyworm. There are some people in our society who say that even that is a serious underestimation of the damage that the fall armyworms did to crops. So I expect that in a budget such as this one, we'll be told what measures will be taken to deal with the shortfall in food production. 100,000 hectares of crops is not a small thing. It will make a strong impact on the availability of food in 2018. Nothing is said about it. In fact, we are told that agriculture did better than under Mahama. Oh, okay. So we don't have a problem with agriculture. Fine, let's move on. You know, the minister himself, in his presentation, did something which was most interesting. He started listing some of the promises that they had made in opposition. And then he will mention some and say, this one, we have fulfilled it. This one, we have fulfilled it. This one, we have started fulfilling it. And that one, we will fulfill. And there was applause in Parliament House. I suppose from the majority side. We will fulfill it is not the same as we are fulfilled. We are fulfilling it is not the same as we are fulfilled. And I think it's important to pay attention to the categories that the minister himself designed and announced. For example, we do know that for the One Village, One Dam project, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. If you wanted to say something has happened, when we got to a time, we could have said that.
No, that one is the one district, one factory. Even that one is somebody's.
Percy, why is it that every time you get a chance to speak, you don't say what you want to say? When I start speaking, then you get things to say.
And it is always when you are speaking.
I don't know.
Old comrades.
Just trying to distract me all the time. Don't distract me, my brother. I'm saying that for the One Village, One Dam project, nothing has happened. Indeed, we have been told by the Deputy Minister for Agriculture that that promise cannot be realized. The Deputy Minister for Agriculture has told us in plain language that the geology of the three northern regions is such that it is impossible to have one dam in every village. He has told us. In fact, he was speaking to journalists in Parliament House, and the story was carried by the Ghanaian Times that the geology of the three northern regions will not make it possible. And that indeed, when they said that one village, one dam, we should have understood them to mean that every village will benefit somehow from a dam. And that if the villages don't get dams, they may get dugouts or boreholes or something else. This is the Deputy Minister for Agriculture. So clearly, that promise should be packed somewhere. That promise is not about to be fulfilled, and it indeed will not be fulfilled. It's impossible to provide a dam in every village. Impossible to do. So pack that one aside. Then the minister tells us that, we should not worry. They promised to give every constituency $1 million. And now we should be talking about $1 million when we don't spend dollars in Ghana and so on. It's a problem. They says, don't worry, don't cry. We promised. In fact, the mechanism, the infrastructure, the instruments for disbursing that 1 million per constituency was not in place. Now it's in place. How is that now in place? Because we've gone to Parliament and gotten Parliament to approve a legislature setting up 3 development agencies. One for the north, one for the middle belt, and one for the coastal area. So now that the framework is ready, we will disburse the $1 million per constituency per year. And I'm sitting down and I'm shaking my head and I'm wondering whether I am the one who is so daft and so stupid. Because if you approve a law, it does not automatically transform into infrastructure and so on. It's just a law. It's just words on paper. Where is the office of the Development Agency for the North? Who is the CEO of the one for the Middle Belt? Where is their budget? Do these development agencies have chairs. Even kitchen stools self, they don't get. Kitchen stool, they don't get. When will these development agencies become fully fledged to the extent that they will be able to deliver and so on? And yet the minister says, we are fulfilling that promise. And then the same goes for the Zongo Development Authority. The minister is so happy because the legislation has been approved by Parliament. The minister is also so happy about the Special Office of Special Prosecutor because the legislation has been approved by Parliament. And there are many of such claims. So I leave it there, I will leave it there for now. And then, my brothers, about a month or two before the budget was read, there was a flurry of activities. The Institute of Physical Studies did a review, an evaluation of the economy. Indeed, the day before, the day after the IFS did this, the IMF also did their own. I've listened to a number of highly distinguished academics and economists and so on do an evaluation of the Ghanaian economy. And all of them agree with the Honorable Ken Oforiatta, Minister of Finance, that 2018 will be very tough. Tough when it comes to revenue generation and mobilization. That the national revenue situation is horrible. Now, you know something? The minister presented the mid-year review this year, somewhere around June, I think. And the minister made the point that things that this government wanted to do, amounting to 3.6 billion cedis, could not be done because the money was simply not there. They couldn't find the revenue, they couldn't generate the revenue to do those things. So they were not there. You understand? IFS is telling us that revenue shortfalls are so significant that they would affect us dearly in 2018. The IMF has also warned that revenue generation is a major problem for the Ghanaian economy, and the minister himself has admitted that. Indeed, at one point when I was listening to Honorable Ken Oforiatta, if it hadn't been for the tenor of his voice, I would have thought that Setekpe was the one presenting the budget. You know why? Because he was saying exactly what Setekpe said, for which he was rubbished, condemned, and so on. You remember Setekpe telling us that the wage bill is one of the problems of this economy, and that we have about 600,000 public servants, public and civil servants, and so on. And that this 600,000 public and civil servants take as wages, salaries, allowances, and so on, about 60% of the total revenue. Was Ken Oforiatta not saying the same thing in Parliament? So those of them in the New Patriotic Party and in the current government who were busily lashing out at Ken Oforiatta, what do they say about themselves when they say the same things that Setekpe used to say? Now, The minister tells us that, oh, now we are not borrowing as much as the NDC was borrowing. And that our debt situation is much, much better. The minister must be thinking and believing that Ghana is a country that is full of idiots. Because otherwise, how can he say that? We've got about $2.25 billion bond. Is that not a loan? Heard about energy sector bond. Is that not a loan? And you're still pursuing bonds and bonds and bonds. All those are loans. In fact, Ghana's debt portfolio has increased in the last 10 months. What we have been told earlier was simply that, look, borrowing is the lazy man's option. And that Ghana has enough resources, you understand, to cater for its needs and so on, and therefore we don't need to borrow. We are still borrowing. The fact is that we are still borrowing. Now, Sammy, I know we don't have enough time. And as I said earlier, we cannot examine everything. I just want to give some pointers to what is likely to happen in 2018. One, the cedi continues to fall. So take note, the cedi continues to fall. Take note. Two, the price of gold is coming down. The price of cocoa is coming down. And the price of crude oil is rising. Our national revenue mobilization is deficient. Now, if you combine all of these factors, what kind of picture do you get for 2018? The picture I get is one which is frightening. The picture I get for 2018 is Kaka Motobi. Kaka Motobi is what I see for 2018. It's frightening. You understand? If you look at all the factors and trends and so on, it's exceedingly frightening. Now, what accounts for this problem? Why are we where we are? I heard Professor Dowona, and he attempted to describe the nature and character of our economy. That may be the fundamental, that is the fundamental problem of the Ghanaian economy. And all this tinkering with the economy and so on does not address that fundamental problem. I'm not going to go into all the specifics, but I just want to say very simply. The fundamental problem of the Ghanaian economy is simply that the people of Ghana do not own their resources. The resources embedded in our soils, the resources above the soil and so on, are not owned by the people of Ghana. They are in the name of Ghana, but who owns them? We don't own those resources. And secondly, those resources are not exploited for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. Largely, those resources are exploited in order to improve the balance sheet of giant companies operating largely from the West. It's not about improving our healthcare and so on. This is the fundamental problem of our economy. How to ensure that Ghanaians own the resources embedded in their soil and above their soil. How to ensure that these resources ultimately will be exploited for the benefit of the working people of Ghana. This is the challenge. And this budget does not address that fundamental challenge. Now, I would have thought that any government, every government, will aim at mobilizing the entirety of our people to join the effort to improve the Ghanaian economy. Yes, improving the Ghanaian economy will not be done, it cannot be done in that small building called Ministry of Finance. Improving the Ghanaian economy will not be done at the Flagstaff House. Indeed, improving the Ghanaian economy will not be done by a combination of Flagstaff House, Parliament House, and Ministry of Finance. The Ghanaian economy will be improved in the agricultural fields where people sweat and labor to produce food and industrial crops. The Ghanaian economy will be improved on the roads through the work of our hard-working drivers, taxi drivers, truck drivers, and so on. They will contribute to improve the Ghanaian economy. The Ghanaian economy will be improved by the labor of workers in the public service and the civil service. The Ghanaian economy will be improved through the sweat and labor of teachers. The Ghanaian economy will be improved by doctors doing their work properly, and so on. It's a combination of all of these which will lead to significant improvements in the Ghanaian economy. And therefore, it's important to mobilize the people of Ghana to participate in that effort to resolve the economic problems that confront us. The only way to mobilize those people is to constantly speak the truth, tell the truth about the state of the economy. If all we are telling the people of Ghana every time is that there's no problem with the economy, everything is okay, we have handled everything, we have been so successful in 10 months, that inflation has dropped, GDP has risen, PNWKZ has risen, and so on, you demobilize the people. You demobilize the people. So it's important to tell the truth about the state of the Ghanaian economy. Now, I read the budget, and one of the graphs I saw was a graph about the gross domestic product, the gross domestic product. Of course, I must say from the very beginning that for me, gross domestic product, inflation, per capita income, gross national product, and all of those things, they are statistical averages. And because they are statistical averages, they hide the truth in many respects. So I don't deal with those things. They are indicators, all right. They are scientific indicators, all right, and so on. But they are scientific indicators of a certain type. You understand?
Yeah.
They are averages, statistical averages. And statistical averages hide the truth. Not all the truth is revealed in statistical averages. I've said this over and over and over and over again. But you see, this graph that Honorable Kenny presented is very interesting. It showed that in the Mills era, we achieved the highest growth rate in the Mills era. Highest growth rate in the Mills era. Indeed, what we are today is about half what was achieved in the Mills era. And I said, oh, but when we got 11 to 12% of growth, they were still referring to Professor Mills as Professor D. Little.
Yeah.
So why are they boasting about 7% when in the Mills era you had about 11 to 12%? You see now? At that time, they said that yes, there has been growth, 11% growth, but it's not reflecting in people's pocket. So the true test of the efficacy of growth is in people's pockets. Alright? And that standard is not set by me, was not said by me, and will not be said by me. That is their own standards. The people's pocket as the thermometer for judging the impact of growth and so on. And then the minister also spent considerable time about inflation and how they've done magic with inflation. That now inflation is only 11 point something percent, 11.2 or 3% or so. You understand? And then I looked at the figure for inflation in the Mills era. And the figure for inflation was below 10%, single-digit inflation. And was sustained over months. If 9% was not good, how can 11.3% be good? If 9% was bad, and 9% led to calling Professor Mills, Professor Doolittle, and so on, why should we be calling the president when he does 11 point something percent?
Professor Do Nothing.
You understand? So, let me end by repeating my mantra, and this has become my mantra. I truly, truly, and genuinely wish that this government, like any other government, succeeds. Because if it doesn't, all of us are in it. You understand? So I truly and genuinely wish success for this government. But the success in public administration is not magical. Success in public administration is the result of the formulation of realistic policies. Policies directed at, targeted at resolving the key problems of the national economy. That is the only thing, and the rigorous implementation of those policies. These are the two things that can bring about success for governments. Success for governments is not achieved by mobilizing party communicators in hotels and writing scripts for them about what to say in response. When we are finished reading the budget, these are the likely questions that are likely to be asked. So when they ask this question, you say this and you say that. That is not how you achieve success in government. You don't achieve success in government by encouraging sycophancy. Success in government is achieved by tackling the true core problems and concerns of people. So those who criticize are sometimes the major contributors to success. Sometimes the sycophants are the detractors. The sycophants are those who create their own dummies, knock them down, and raise their hands in celebration. The sycophants are a major problem for every government and every administration. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt, for your submission. It brings us to some 30 more minutes before the show comes to an end. And let me acknowledge a few text messages before we move on. Sammy, please tell Uncle Kwesi Pratt that I'm enjoying his arithmetic. But the figure will actually come to 41.66.
No, less than what I said.
Yes, 41.66. Don't forget, Kenufuriata is our modern Konfanoche, as said by his uncle. That's from Chrissy Halliston from London, sending that through this morning. Let me go to Facebook and read a few of the Facebook messages. This one from Starring Wendell says, physical exhaustion, they say, would only make one's brain think pedantically. It would only form momentous, rounded phrases that means nothing. Such was Kenneth Furiata's reading of the country's fiscal spendings and allocations in next year's pedestrian budget, which was riddled with lies and more utopian promises. That your contribution, Courage Kotoka says, good morning, Sam. Citizen, I want to know, is it true that the petrol price will shoot up by 10% as it is also true that the Director General of Ghana Education Service issued a letter to all headmasters across the country for students to pay school fees, even take admission from them under the free SHS. I want to know. I think yesterday I saw on social media somebody showing the prices of some filling stations and how it has shot up. But as to the official position as to whether petroleum prices have gone up, I cannot independently confirm. But I saw a filling station where the price of diesel and petrol had gone up. Let me read this one. Musa Abatwa says, Shen, when we raise legitimate concerns about this Wahala budget, NPP says we are not reading. Now, what exactly is the contribution of the Office of the Senior Minister to warrant a budgetary allocation of which some 1 million goes to payment of salaries of staff of 25 people in the Flagstaff House, and setting up the voluntary donation in order to sustain the free SHS policies captured in the 149 budget. We are criticizing them constructively. That's your view as well, and you call the budget an Ebola one. AU Farouk Tamale says, good morning to you, Mr. Shen, and to your able panelists. In fact, announcing reduction in electricity tariff in the budget would see like buying a wedding gown before proposing to a lady. 419 budget indeed. This one from Komla Genya. He says, this finance minister presents himself as an avowed Christian, yet he looked into the eyes of Ghanaians and lied to us. The most ridiculous is the claim that his government ended Dumso. What a way of making mockery of Christianity. But I don't blame him. They see Ghanaians as fools who will continue to believe their lies. And that's from Komla Kenya, sending that through this morning. From Stephen Kobnatu says, why is the NDC crying that NPP stole its projects? A party that didn't spare monkeys won't spare beautiful projects. Or, for stealing, they will attempt. It is for us to expose them at every effort, since they have nothing to show for all the borrowing so far. That's from Stephen Kobna Atu. This one from Abubakar Issa Jallo says, in fact, we are not becoming a laughing stock to the entire world with this confused SHS. This policy they are now introducing, which is the FSHS, will be cushioned by individuals' contributions, has really showed that our government is confused and desperate, and it exposes their dishonesty and lies that they told Ghanaians in opposition. Well, my brother, quite a very lengthy text message you sent through this morning. That's on Facebook. Okay, Baba Musa sends the message. Kojokaba, you have gone too soon. Life truly is too short. Very devastating news for today. And that's yours as well. Let me read a few of the tweets that I have with me. Habib in Sawom says, Samo, okay. Baba Musa, I think it's the same message you sent on Twitter. Patrick Aaron says, the budget was completely hilarious and must be thrown out of context immediately. Habib in Sawom says, good morning to you and your cherished listeners. How could the finance minister lie with impunity in parliament? I can't believe it. What did the NPP do to solve Dumso? Hey, Amagana. Anyas tweets and says, Sammy, could you upload Alhaji And Alhaji programs on YouTube? Also, the Gold Power Drive. Okay, we'll try and do that. Steve says, okay, I think it's the same message, Steve, you sent on Facebook, so I've had the privilege of reading that. Sammy, how many megawatts has the NPP added to the national grid? We want to know. They should stop the lies. That's from Charles Cardinal. And those, I believe, are the text messages I have so far. Conquest Academy of Business Studies, CABS, is an accredited school by GES and WAEC. The school runs programs like business accounting, business secretarial, and general arts, and also has a soccer team that is recognized by the GFA. The school was crowned the Greater Accra Champions for 2017 Electronic Constitution quiz organized by the NCCE. The school has vacancies for both new and continuing students, and it is located at Latebia Koshi behind Radio Gold near Latter Day Saints Church. Contact Conquest Academy of Business Studies on 020-876-1315 or 0277283271. That's a bit of information for you. There is this one that I'll share with you that has to do with Methodist University College Ghana Alumni Homecoming. I'll share that with you before the show comes to an end. And that brings us to some 25 more minutes before the show comes to an end. We will give ourselves 5 minutes each to talk about the happenings in Zimbabwe. But comrade, you wanted to make a point quickly. I'll give you 5 minutes for that, and then let's start. After that, then you move on with the Zimbabwean.
Well, I just wanted to talk about the issue of the 13%.
Okay.
If you listen to the Minister of Finance, the 13% is on the energy levy that the PURC has control over. So it is not on the entire tariff. Government didn't touch taxes. Government didn't touch other charges. So even if it is, let's say, 10 cedis, let's say 10 cedis is the energy levy that the PURC has the authority. Because for him to refer it to PURC, it means that PURC are granted, or assuming that PURC would even implement the proposal that government has given to them. They can only implement a 13% of the energy levy that the PURC has control over. So if the energy levy is 10 cedis, and then they are going to implement the 13%. If you divide 13 by 100 times the 10, you are going to get 1.3. So 1.3 cedis out of 10 cedis. So it is not a 13% on the tariff.
On the total?
No, it is just the 13% on the energy levy that the PURC has control over. Now assume that PURC is going to say, yes, the proposal that government has submitted, we will implement same. It is going to be 13% on the energy levy. Why is it that government didn't talk about taxes? Government didn't talk about other charges on tariffs. So it is a complete deceit. The other issue that I just want to talk about has to do with the free SHS. Comrade Kwesi Pratt, yesterday I had an encounter, and I think it's important I share that encounter with your listening public. I called a gentleman to work on my laptop. He is an IT guy, he works at Circle. And he told me that he has two of his brothers. Last year, one went to SSS. He paid almost 1,000 Ghana cedis for the fees. That is 2016. And now when the MPP came promising free education, he told me for the first time he supported the MPP and all his siblings that he had control over who were voting, they voted MPP because he felt that for the second brother to go to SSS, if it is free, then he is going to save himself that money. He said there's a second brother went to school, he didn't pay anything. But he told me something that was shocking. He said at Circle, the average you could make a day was 100 Ghana cedis. There were days you could make more than 200, 300. There were days you could make less, but averagely 100 Ghana cedis. So a month he was making at least a minimum of 3,000 Ghana cedis. So 2016, when the brother was going to SSS, he paid 1,000 Ghana cedis. A month, he made 3,000. He spent 1,000 Ghana cedis on the brother, leaving how much? 2,000. He said today, with the free SHS, when the second brother was going to SSS, he didn't pay the 1,000 Ghana cedis. But he tells me that he now makes an average of 30 Ghana cedis a day. So if he multiplied the 30 Ghana cedis by 30, he's making 900 Ghana cedis. So even with the 900 Ghana cedis, he hasn't paid fees, but he's left with just 900 Ghana cedis. But last year, with the 1,000 Ghana cedis which he paid, he was left with 2,000 Ghana cedis a month because he could make an average of 100 Ghana cedis a day. And he said, Honorable, the shocking aspect of it is that my brother was posted to a different school. We had to rent accommodation. A boy at that age, my worry is that he's too young to be living on his own. Because under the free SHS, if the placement, they place you in a particular school, and you go there, you don't even want that school, and you want to come back to Accra, then you pay fees. He gave me an example of another friend of his, who was sent to a school somewhere. They didn't want there because no accommodation. They brought the boy here. They got a school for the boy in Accra. They had to pay the fees. So this is a practical example that you may be happy that there is free education, but the point is that there is no money in the system. The point is that the economy is in shambles. The minister came talking about, oh, we didn't spend beyond appropriation. But the question is, have you paid contractors? No. Have you paid even statutory funds? have not been paid. Now, if you are selling, you are a phone repairer at Circle or anywhere, once contractors are paid, the contractors would have paid their employees. The employees whose phones are stolen or spoiled, they would have gone to repair their phones or buy other phones. I mean, this is a practical example of what people can easily see about this. He mentioned 220 tractors that were given out. Those tractors were already procured by the NDC government. It isn't something that government went in for. These were things that were already procured. Comrade Kwesi, if you talk about the agric, yes, just a second. If you talk about the agric, they said the agric sector, even with army WEM, has done so well. Clearly, people are still harvesting they will harvest from November to December. So whatever results we got in the agric sector was as a result of what happened in the 2016 harvesting season. It means that by the time the MPP came to power, people were harvesting. So for you to make projections and determine how agric fared, it will take the next 3, 4, 5 months. So the results we have gotten as a result of the agric sector doing well is as a result of the output we got in the 2016, which harvesting ended somewhere in December. So it's January, February, thereabout.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to assume your allotted time for the Zimbabwean issue is left with only 3 minutes.
Yes, Zimbabwe, I don't think that I have much to say on this.
Okay.
What I can only say is that you cannot downplay the achievement of Robert Mugabe. If you listen to the military have not said that they are against the revolution, that they are doing everything possible to do well to protect the revolution. So when I listened to when the announcement was made, I listened to a lot of people who says, oh, then it means that the Mugabe's revolution and administration has come to an end. It was as a result of purging members of the ZANU-PF. And we think we must understand how it all comes about. It's as a result of a public pronouncement. Now you had the first lady, the wife of Robert Mugabe, in a rally publicly stated that she was going to ensure that the vice president was dismissed. Stated publicly. And even when that statement was made, you had some members who are aligned to the vice president who hooted at her at that rally, and those people were arrested. Now, there is a relationship between the president, the military general, and the vice president. I mean, they were tremendous during the revolution. Now, if they were tremendous during the revolution, it's a revolution that at any point in time they would want to protect. Now, if the military thinks that certain things are being done that would undermine the revolution, then we need to come in. And he made one statement which is, for me, is of interest. And he said that that is the military leader, that the threat by the military followed the sacking of the vice president. But the military leader made one statement: we must remind those behind treacherous shenanigans that when it comes to the matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in. And then he went further to say the known counter-revolutionary elements who have fomented the current instability must be fished out. Those bent on hijacking the revolution will not be allowed to do so. It is our strong and deeply considered position that if drastic actions is not taken immediately, our beloved country Zimbabwe is definitely heading to become a new colony again. So clearly, they are not against Mugabe, but they think that certain things within the revolution ought to be done. If I were Mugabe, to be very honest, I would have said that it's enough. I would relinquish power and get like Fidel Castro did. Because the revolution moves on. It is not about who is at the helm of affairs. And there was so much confidence within the leadership. Fidel Castro, even though he wasn't well, but he could still run Cuba at that time. But he felt that, look, the revolution is something that drives the thinking, the policy, and everything of this country. So I don't necessarily need to be at the helm of affairs. Let me relinquish power, but I will still give that support, the moral support, because clearly Mugabe is about 98 years. He is weak. He cannot, 93 years. He is weak. He can no longer execute some of the things he can. And I believe that elements within took advantage of that. And that is why the military is doing this. And that is why repeatedly they have said that this is not a coup. Because if it is a coup, then there should be an immediate elections. The good thing is that he was found again, discharging his responsibilities as the leader of the ZANU-PF. Because when they sacked the vice president, they also sacked him from the party, who clearly was a serious contender with the first lady. The first lady made it very clear that she was going to contest for the leadership of the ZANU-PF. By extension, she had the intention, or she was willing to lead the party. And I think the first ladies must understand that there is a difference between your husband and a revolution or a governance of a country. This is the lesson to many first leaders across the continent.
Thank you very much. 15 minutes to 12. Dr. Percy, 5 minutes.
Well, okay. So it's a matter of sadness that what is happening in Zimbabwe is happening. Clearly, it has to do with the issue of succession and the notion of is it dynasties, and sometimes the mistaken view that because you share the bed of the leader, you can step into his place. I'm saying this without a lot of knowledge about the First Lady, what contribution she may have made politically to the development of the ZANU-PF and its policy. But it was clear that there had been some maneuvering about succession which has come to a head. Okay. And in the wake of all of this, listening to the foreign Western media, it was like people were gleeful that the demon was about to exit. If anything at all, what is happening with the negotiations for, and I think there's a mass rally in Harare this morning, involving the war veterans and others. You know, and then the thing about the Zimbabwe is that the government grew directly out of the fight for independence, okay, and that the so-called war veterans have a big say in what goes on, and that whatever historic contributions Mugabe may have made, it appears that the popular sentiment is that it is time to go. And there was a maneuvering around his succession and what looked like the obvious attempt to promote the wife, which has brought things to a head. Incidentally, something similar to this happened with the overthrow of Mubarak. It was about engineering the succession of his son, you know, etc., 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 which says that, look, dynasties, although we find them, they really hark back to this undemocratic business of electing people on the basis of their bloodlines or relationships, rather than their fitness to deal with the people's concerns. It's really sad, but it appears that the Zimbabweans are fully capable of handling these issues and moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Percy. Prof.
Yeah, I think the points made by Comrade Mutala and Dr. Percy are all relevant and valid. Indeed, President Mugabe is the only, or perhaps now will soon be the last, or the founding presidents still in power in Africa. He may not be the longest reigning president. We know at the heart of the Zimbabwe issue is the land reform program that was part of the agenda when the Lancaster Agreement was signed that led to the independence in 1980. what was a valid understanding or contract, when it came to implementation, became the sore point, because you cannot really reform land if the whites held all the arable lands or rich fertile lands under colonial rule without taking some of the lands out of their hands. And ever since that 2000, notwithstanding environmental tragedy like the drought of the early 2000s, Mugabe or Zimbabwe had really been on the spotlight, and the interest of the West in the whole event cannot be underestimated or cannot be downgraded. Of course, succession is at the heart of it. There are times when I ask myself, when independence was won in 1980, Mugabe was then 55 years or so, a lawyer who had led the fight with Joshua Nkomo and other freedom fighters. Nkomo died later. So some few years ago, the question was, aren't there any of the revolutionary or the freedom fighters who could step in to bring a new face and a new lease of life and a new direction to the Zimbabwe cause? And so events that are unfolding obviously will have roots in this whole spectacle. But the situation is still bizarre or hazy. Just yesterday, the military allowed him to be at the congregation of the University of Zimbabwe, where he's the chancellor. And he was there in that capacity, making speeches. And he may be old, but I think he attended our swearing-in ceremony in January. And if you heard him when he met the media, I think Mugabe is mentally alert. His memory of events, eloquence, very sharp. And in fact, he grades as one of the most lettered heads of state. He has several degrees that he earned. Not he wasn't honorary. So, but sincerely, his appreciation of the global political issues cannot really be underestimated. He is mentally alert and then very sharp. But obviously, the military, as such, this morning, if you read the newscast, is that there had been a meeting between him on one side and the General Chiwenga, the defense minister, the Catholic Bishop of Harare was present to moderate events, and that they were expecting a resignation from him by the close of today. What has happened thereafter, I don't know. But at least the central issue is that the cause for which the freedom fighters fought for independence, which was attained in 1980, that cause is still relevant. And the symbolic representation of Mugabe, because few people now talk for the African cause. All our leaders have become puppets who just rationalize the new global economic order. And we need a voice for Africa. And even if he's not there physically as head of state, I think his ideas will still continue, because we need a voice for the African cause. And I think that is what Mugabe represented. But coming days will tell us exactly the new direction. For now, they say it's not a coup, but whether he's under house arrest and he's ruling, nobody can tell yet. So those are my submission, and we hope that Zimbabwe will still intact and then rejuvenate, so that it will still play the role that we expect it to play among the nations in Africa.
Thank you, Professor Nino Dohuna. Mr. Pratt.
Well, there are just a few things that need to be said. And the first one is that great women or great men do not necessarily marry great people and give birth to great children. There are many great, extraordinary, outstanding personalities whose offspring have been completely useless and whose offspring have contributed significantly to the denigration of their legacies and so on. And that's a lesson that we need to learn. And there are many, many, many examples around the world. And who are the children of Toussaint or Louverture? One of the greatest African generals ever. The African general who defeated Napoleon's army in war. Who are his children? And we can continue. I don't want to continue because if I continue, I may end up in Ghana, and I don't want to do that. You can continue for me when you get the microphone. So I think that's a very important lesson. The other thing that I like to say simply is that a lot of what we are getting is second-hand information. And it is absolutely dangerous to make judgments on the basis of second-hand information. It does appear that some negotiations are taking place, and it does appear that the people involved in the negotiations are many and varied. I suspect that SADC somehow is involved. I have a very strong suspicion that the AU is involved. I have a strong suspicion that Morgan Changarai's group is also involved, and ZANU-PF is involved. The army is involved, even though I think that the army is part of ZANU-PF, and so on. You understand? What is happening in Zimbabwe is very, very complex, exceedingly complex. And if I were in a position to offer any advice, I would simply say that the people of Zimbabwe should not destroy what they built with their heads and hearts with their feet. That's all.
I believe that brings us to
90.5
end of the show today, and I'm grateful to you that you made time to join us. There's just 1, 2, 3 text messages I'll read before we finally part company or part ways. This one says the politicization of the budget tells how the Akufo-Addo government is likely to fall like the Jericho War. On the issue of the reduction of electricity bill, my little advice to Ghanaians is that we fasten our seatbelts since things are going to be so tough in the coming days. Lies and deceit won't take them as far as it is written in the book of Proverbs 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. And still, the text that says John 10:10. Take your Bible and read that. That's from Lee Stowell. Nana Poku, Executive Director, he joined us on the show. That the Good Governance Advocacy Group, Ghana, he sent that through this morning. Okay, this one says, Mr. Shen, Mr. Shen, Zimbabwe's exports to other African countries as a percentage of GDP is the highest in Africa, as well as imports. She until 2015 had the highest literacy rate in Africa. That country is ready for a takeoff. That your contribution as well sent through. And so finally, we have been live on GFM Radio in London, Sekpele 104.3 in Lekpe, Shine 96.9 in Akachi, Lukusi Radio 96.1, Ve Golokwati, and then Radio Pando 102.5, Saps Radio Online. I am grateful that you made it a point to join me today, and my panelist on Alhaji And Alhaji, the mother of all talk show. It happens every Saturday between 9 and 12 midday when we check out of here and hand you over to the sports team to take over from us. And this morning, we have looked thoroughly at the financial statement and economic policy. That's the 2018 budget presented to Parliament by the Finance Minister and its socio-economic impact on Ghanaians. Also, did we touch base with the happenings in Zimbabwe And that ended the conversation for us this morning. I don't have all the wisdom in the world, and so I had able individuals to help me deal with the issues. Mr. Christopher Jr., he's the managing editor of the Insight newspaper. Comrade Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed, former MP for Nanton and a deputy minister for trade and industry. Professor Nino Dowuna, a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana. Dr. David Percy, student of history and politics. They join me in the studio for us to do justice to the issues. My producer has been Mr. Patrick Asford-Bodu. Technical team, Peter, and then the other members who are here to support us to bring you this wonderful discussion. I am grateful to you as well. Make a date Monday morning for the Gold Power Drive as we continue with our discussion of the budget and other relevant issues that may happen within the weekend. And so make a date with me Monday morning. Also, still finally, from the entire team here, our condolences to the family of Kaba of Asempa FM. We had the very sad news this morning when we got to the office of the passing away of our colleague and brother, and we wish our sister Valentina of Oyefiye strength from God, and we pray that the Lord himself will be her banner and keep her strong in these very terrible moments. And let me say good morning to you, Helen Williams of UK, very good friend. Have a real blessed morning. And that brings us to the end of the show today. Enjoy.
Africa's great song, Sergeant Dr. Kroma.